In this video, I'm gonna recreate Severance with a budget of $0. Severance is an amazing series that I'm watching and I love the computer animation. And I love it so much that I was like, I need to recreate this. I'm super excited. I hope you are too. So let's jump into it. All right, we're here in After Effects. I'm gonna create a new composition at 4K, 25 frames per second. Press OK. Now I'm first gonna create a background. So let's just go to Layer, New, Solid. And I'm gonna make it the color maybe like something like this, like a dark cyan. Press OK, press OK. Cool. Now looking at the design, I need a lot of numbers first. I also need the Lumen logo. Now what's nice is that my INI already created a script. Now jokes aside, I used ChatGPT for a script. And with this script, I can go to File, Scripts, Run Script File. And I have this Tom's Project Severance Numbers Grid script, which you can of course download by joining the free community down below. Or even better, my paid community, because then you will also get the project file. Now let's just run this. Let's click on open. And now I get first the amount of columns. Basically, I want 20 columns to make this work. And then the amount of rows, let's keep this to 10. And then the spacing, I think 100 should be fine, maybe 150. And what it will do, it will generate all these random numbers. And trust me, this will save a lot of time doing this. Now we have these numbers. I just want to link them to a null object so we can move them around, maybe also scale them. I am first going to select them all anyway. So I'm going to click on the first one. I'm going to go down and hold shift and click on the last one. And I'm going to change the font size here, maybe to 25. That is already a bit better. Let's create a new null. So let's go to Layer, New, Null. And what this basically does is it creates an object where we can link them to. Let's move this null below the text. That is really important because it looks at the order of these layers. And then select all of these layers again. Again, first one, then hold shift, click on the last one. And then we can just parent them to the null object. Cool. Now that we did that, we can move our grid, as you can see. And I'm also going to press S for scale and scale this up so it fills this screen. Probably even going to make it a bit bigger, maybe something like this. And now the crazy thing, and I'm so excited to show you guys this, there is already a grid controller. And the cool thing is that there is a scale effect, max scale size, wiggle strength, and the wiggle speed. I'm going to go through it all. Let's start with the coolest effect, and that is the scale effect. If we set this really high, then you'll see what this does. Let's set this to maybe 600, just to show you what it does. And then the max scale effect, let's set this to 300. As you can see, it will scale these numbers. And they will scale around this null object. So this grid controller is also a null object, which means that if we move this around, as you can see, it will move the numbers with it. It's like reactive animation. And when I see these kinds of things, my creativity goes wild, because you can of course use this effect on other things too. Now the scale effect radius is basically the radius around it, how much is affected. So if this is really low, let's say 200, it will only affect a small circle around this, so it will only be scaled once the null is exactly on the number. For this effect to work, I think it actually needs to be quite high, so around 600 is actually quite cool. And then the amount of scale, you don't want this too high because then they will be out of proportion, but I think around 300 in this case is really nice. Now the wiggle strength is also important. As you can see, these numbers are not perfectly aligned. It's because they're wiggling. So we have a wiggle strength, that's how much they wiggle, and the speed is how much they wiggle in terms of the speed. So if I play this now quickly, and you might be able to see it and it might make you a bit dizzy, but the numbers wiggle on their own. And this is also really important for our effect. Now for our animation, I'm just gonna use this null and move this to the bottom. I'm gonna press P for position and set a keyframe. And then I'm gonna move it to maybe around the center. Then I'm gonna go a bit further, maybe 1 second in. I'm gonna move this to the center. I'm gonna change the pen tool to a convert vertex tool, and let's drag this out a bit. And this will make it look a bit more organic. Now we can of course also select these keyframes, right click, Keyframe Assistant Easy Ease, and we can go into the graph editor to make it a bit more smooth, so it basically slows down. Maybe even drag this out a bit, something like this. And now the numbers will be selected here, and basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these numbers too myself. I have a good feeling with these, and I just click on them on the screen, and it's really easy because then I just set a P for position, I set a keyframe, I go a bit further in time, and then I'm gonna move them. Now what is important is that we're also gonna move the null later on. So let's move them first, maybe to around this area. I'm gonna probably have the bin around here. And this is a neat trick. I'm gonna go to align and I'm just gonna center them so they all go to one point. Now we also need to move the null object that is affecting these numbers, because as you can see now they will scale down, which makes total sense because they're moving away from the null. So let's select that null. Let's go to that keyframe and see where it is here. Let's set a keyframe for that one too. So I'm just gonna set a keyframe here and I'm gonna go a bit further. Like I said, I'm gonna make sure that this one follows those numbers. I'm gonna right click on this keyframe and then I'm gonna do a toggle hold keyframe so it doesn't move after this and it will just move with these numbers. Now the timing is completely off, and that is because the graph editor is completely off. So let's go into the graph editor. You can see here the timing of this keyframe is off. So we have to align it a bit better. Let's move this maybe a bit. And as you can see now, it should move together with these numbers. And what's cool is that it's still affecting the numbers around it. Cool. We're already super far with the effect. We just need to add a cursor, add a bit of spice, and then if we want, we can even put it in a 3D scene. So I have this random cursor that I got from the internet, completely for free, of course. And the cool thing is, because we got a null, we can link it to it. But let's just make sure that we are at the start first and that it's aligned with the null. So let's move that down, and I'm gonna scale it down too, but let's link it first. So let's parent this to our grid controller, and it should now move with the grid controller, as you can see. So it almost looks like the cursor is affecting it, right? And now what I do want to do is scale this down a bit, maybe to something like this. Let's play this again. It's already better. Of course, we can also add motion blur. Now here I want to select them. So I'm gonna press P for position. I'm gonna set a keyframe, and basically during this time, around here-ish, I want it to go in a circle. Let's make it go here first, and then we'll make it go around. And we can go again to the convert vertex tool that we used before to drag out the path a bit so it becomes more organic. Maybe also change this one. And this doesn't have to be perfect. Maybe we need to adjust the timing a bit. What is also smart is to put these numbers that so let's select these keyframes. I think we have the null too. Yeah, so let's move these a bit so we have a bit more time to work with. So again, mouse goes like this, goes around, make it go a full round, and let's make it go back. Now I adjust the cursor a tiny bit more so it's a bit more of a nice shape around the numbers that we're going to select. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the position, hit Command C or Control C on Windows. Now let's just draw something with the pen tool. The shape doesn't really matter. Let's go into the contents, go into the shape, go into the path, select the path and hit Command V on Mac or Control V on Windows. And as you can see, we now have the path, exactly the path that the cursor also made. And now we do have to align it a bit, and also it looks really ugly because we need to finish this. So let's close it first. I'm going to select this last point using the selection tool, and I'm going to go to the pen tool and I'm going to close it. And I'm also going to change this a bit so it's a bit of a nicer shape. We can go to the convert vertex tool and then we can just drag this out a bit. Nice. Now again, I do want to make sure that this is aligned well. So let's see. Let's press T for transparency, set this to 50%, and let's align this with our numbers. Maybe I'm going to scale it up a bit, press S for scale, and then I'm going to move this layer down. So I'm just going to drag it down all the way down. And then what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to Command D or Control D this layer. So we're going to duplicate it. I'm going to turn off the fill. So turn that off. Press OK. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to fade this bottom one in. So press T for transparency, set a keyframe, and let's just go to the beginning where the cursor starts to animate, somewhere like here, and let's turn this all the way down. And then when these numbers start to move, I'm gonna make it fade out again. Now this top layer will just contain the stroke, which is actually great because we can go into this, we can go add a trim paths to this, go into the trim paths and animate the end. Now the only thing I want to make sure is of course that the start position is good. So also maybe let's start it around here, set it to 0, and I actually need to animate the start instead of the end. I'm just gonna make the stroke a bit more thick so I can see what we're doing here. Yeah, so we want to animate the start from 100% to 0. And I also want to change the offset. So let's change the offset to all the way where the mouse is, or the cursor. Let's of course turn the motion blur on. Now it's going too quick, so let's see if we can change that. Now if I'm gonna play it, as you can see, it will have a cool outline. Now when this one fades out, I'm also gonna fade this one out. So let's set the transparency by pressing T on our keyboard, and let's set this to 0. And now of course I'm gonna also change the stroke back to maybe 5. So it's more of a thin line. Let's play this again. Cool. Now what I don't like is that it's not really organic. The shape doesn't form organically. So we could even change the shape path, or we can change the opacity so it appears later on. Maybe something like this. There we go. Now I am missing some UI elements, and of course it still misses the sauce. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to delete some bottom numbers because we're not going to use those anyway. So let's select those and hold shift to deselect the background. And then I'm just going to hit backspace, and the same thing I'm going to do with the top. Shift click on the background, delete. There we go. Now let's add the Lumen logo and let's put that in the top. Press S for scale to scale that down a bit. Now I'm not going to add all the elements. What I do want to add is the container where these numbers go in. I'm just going to use the rectangle tool and maybe also same color. And it's really easy. I'm just going to draw a rectangle just like this. Press T for transparency. Set this to 50% too. I'm going to change the anchor point by using the pen behind tool, and let's set it to the bottom left. And you can hold Command or Control on Windows to make it snap, which is nice. Let's center this a bit. Let's duplicate it, Command D, and I'm going to move it by holding Shift. Again, use the anchor mover tool or the pen behind tool to move it to the bottom right. Now what I'm also going to do is again select all of these 3 layers and move them to the bottom. Oop, there we go. And I'm going to rotate them. So press R for rotation, set a keyframe. And basically what I want to do is before they come in, so around here, they open up. So they're straight first, and then here they open to make those numbers go in. Press R for rotation on the other one, and I'm gonna do the same thing. Let's move this. Nice. Maybe even drag these keyframes out a bit so it's a bit slower. So even before they come in, they get in there. And then of course the last thing we need to do is make sure that all of these text numbers disappear. We can make them fade out, or we can just select them all, and we can also click on the background and lock that. So I hit the lock icon, and that's a cool trick because now I can just select these here. Bloop, there we go. I can go to this point, press T for transparency, set a keyframe, go a bit further, and just make them all fade out. Bloop, there we go. And let's do that all together. As you can see, they will all fade out. And then we can even make them close again. So press R for rotation, set a keyframe, and let's set it to 0 again. Now let's add some sauce. And what I mean with this, it's now really plain and really boring. And this can actually be a style that you want to go for. But basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all the layers. So hit Command A or Control A on Windows. I'm going to go to Layer, Pre-compose, or hit Command Shift C. And then we can simply type in number animation, hit enter. It will all be in one composition. I'm going to add a vignette first of all. Make that quite high. I'm going to add a chromatic aberration. And this is really high now. I want to change that a bit. Set the horizontal to maybe 100. And then let's dial these numbers down to maybe -2. And aberration bloom maybe to 2. Set the fall of distance to 0, maybe even to 1. There we go. As you can see, it's just a tiny bit, right? Like here you can see it, like a tiny bit of chromatic aberration. That's cool. Now let's add a deep glow too. I think that will help a lot to make it really vintage. As you can see, it already works really well. Now I think this is a bit too much. Maybe dial down the exposure to 0.1, and let's also add a tint to this, because what I want to do is I want to map the white to maybe a bit more of a light bluish. There we go. Maybe dial down the radius a bit to 100. We're really getting there. Now, as you can see, this looks so dope, right? Like, I love how the reactive numbers go up. And these effects make such a difference, because if we turn this off, this is what it looks like, and this is what it looks like now. And now the cool thing is we can render this and put this in a 3D scene. And then you get something like this. Now, if you want to know how I did this full 3D scene, then do join the Social Creator Club Pro. This is my editing course, and it's full of deep dives on several styles. I will teach you crazy advanced editing techniques, but it will also teach you how to get to 1 to 5K a month as an editor within 30 days. Link of the Social Creator Club is in the description, so do check that out. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to leave a comment of what you want to see next, and then I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.